while my wife was in the hospital. After a drunk driving accident, I uncovered her affair. So I made sure she had nothing left. The call from the hospital came unexpectedly, shaking the normalcy of my day. My wife, Eleanor, had been in an accident. As I rushed through the busy streets of Chicago, my mind raced with worry. I prayed for her safety, hoping that whatever had happened wasn't too severe. When I arrived at the emergency room, a wave of relief washed over me. Eleanor was bruised and battered but alive. The nurse handed me her belongings, including her phone, and informed me that the police were still investigating the accident. Something about the way they looked at me made me uneasy. They asked if she had been upset, if we had argued recently, or if there was any history of depression. I was confused. Why were they asking such questions? Then the report arrived, and the reality sank in. Eleanor had been intoxicated in the middle of the afternoon. She had crashed into a parked car and veered onto the sidewalk. Fortunately, no pedestrians were hurt. The situation didn't add up. She never drank that early in the day, and the road she crashed on wasn't part of her usual route. Still trying to process it all, I sat beside her as she drifted in and out of consciousness. The moment her eyes fluttered open, the first thing she asked for was her phone. It wasn't concern for her injuries, not even a question about what had happened, just an urgent need to retrieve her phone. My instinct screamed at me that something was off. I lied, telling her it was with the hospital staff, and watched her reaction. She relaxed, relieved. That was the moment I knew. There was something on that phone she didn't want me to see. Later that night, after she had fallen asleep, I unlocked her phone using her fingerprint. What I found shattered me. Dozens of missed calls and messages flooded her screen, all from a contact labeled Daily Bite. But the messages weren't about food orders or deliveries. They were intimate, filled with words that burned my eyes and made my stomach churn. Eleanor had been having an affair for at least 6 months. The betrayal cut deep. In those messages, she spoke about me with disdain, mocked my efforts as a husband, and detailed her encounters with this other man. She had disguised his number under an innocent name to keep her secret safe. I read through their conversations, feeling sick as I pieced together how she had deceived me. The accident made sense now. She had been on her way home from one of their meetings, drunk and reckless. I sat there in silence, staring at the device that had just torn my life apart. The woman I loved, the woman I had shared my life with, had been sneaking around behind my back. And for what? Some fleeting moments of passion? She had been able to lie so easily, to pretend like everything was fine between us, while secretly betraying me over and over again. I couldn't stay. I had to leave before she woke up. I packed her belongings, left them outside our house, and walked away from the hospital feeling hollow. But that emptiness quickly turned into something else. Rage. If she thought she could walk away from this unscathed, she was wrong. As I reached home, her phone kept buzzing. Her affair partner was panicking, desperate to reach her. Instead of ignoring it, I decided to take control. I answered, pretending to be her. His messages were pathetic, filled with apologies and pleas to meet. He was married just like she was. He had promised Eleanor he would leave his wife soon, but clearly he had no intention of doing so. I played along for a while before cutting him off completely, threatening to expose him if he contacted her again. He went silent after that. The next morning, I took it further. Using her phone, I sent a resignation email to her boss, claiming workplace harassment. It was accepted almost immediately. She had complained about her toxic work environment before, so they didn't question it. Now, she was jobless and alone. I emptied her credit card, wiped out her savings, and destroyed all her identification documents. I left nothing for her to rebuild easily. By the time she woke up, she wouldn't just be dealing with the fallout of her accident. She would be dealing with the complete collapse of the life she had built on lies. When the hospital called me about her discharge, I stalled. I let them believe I was coming but never showed up. Eventually, they must have contacted Eleanor's parents, because soon they were at my doorstep, furious. They demanded answers, blaming me for abandoning their daughter in her time of need. I said nothing, just handed them the phone and let them read for themselves. Their anger faded into shame as they realized the truth. Their daughter wasn't a victim. She was the cause of her own downfall. But even then they begged me to reconsider, to remember my vows. That was laughable. Had Eleanor remembered hers? She had made a mockery of our marriage, treating me like an option while she indulged in her desires elsewhere. I had no sympathy left. I told them to take her belongings and leave. There was no place for her in my home anymore. My lawyer was quick to act. With undeniable proof of infidelity, I ensured I wouldn't have to suffer financial losses in the divorce. The papers were delivered to her as she was still recovering, and she reacted just as expected: rage, threats, desperate pleas. She called endlessly, left countless voicemails, sent angry emails. She swore she would take me to court for what I had done, but she had no ground to stand on. She had nothing left. Days later, she requested a meeting. Against my better judgment, I agreed, but only under strict conditions. We met in a neutral, public place. My lawyer was on standby in case anything happened. I expected more hostility, but instead she just looked defeated. She tried to justify her actions, saying it had just been fun, that it had never meant anything. That somehow made it worse. All those months of deception, and she didn't even love him. She had ruined everything we had for nothing. I asked her why. Why betray me when we had built a life together? Her answer was vague, empty. She couldn't give me a reason, just excuses. She even admitted that her affair partner had abandoned her the moment things got serious. He had never planned on leaving his wife. She had just been a game to him. For the first time since discovering her betrayal, I laughed. She had destroyed her marriage for a man who didn't even want her, and now she was left with nothing. In the end, she signed the papers. The finality of it all hit me as I watched her hand tremble over the document. We had been together for nearly a decade, but now it was over. There was no fixing this. There was no going back. As I walked away from that meeting, I felt lighter. The pain was still there, but it no longer weighed me down. She had tried to break me, but in the end, she had only destroyed herself. Life moves on. Betrayal stings, but it also teaches. I don't regret what I did. I only regret ever trusting someone who never deserved it. And if there's one thing to take from this, it's that some stories aren't just lessons. They're warnings. Stay alert, trust your instincts, and never let someone else write your ending for you. Oh, and if you want to hear more stories like this, you might want to stick around. You never know when the next one will hit home.